Hi to those that have joined us. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes, just see if there's any latecomers, and then we'll get started. Well, what we'll do is we'll just get started, and if there's any latecomers, then they can just pop in. So, thanks everybody for taking some time out your evening to join us tonight for the Making the Move event. It's an online event to give people information about making a move overseas if you're a GP that's considering making the move, and hopefully there was some useful information for you. So I'll run through what the sort of timetable is going to be. You'll hear a little bit from me, a very little bit from me, about a brief intro about Head Medical. Then we will discuss some jobs and locations. We'll hear initially from Dr. Henry McKay, who has made the move to New Zealand. Debbie's assisted with that, so he'll tell us a little bit about the move to New Zealand. We'll have a couple of minutes for questions and answers. But Dr. McKay's heading off on a 3-day hike, and he's on a short schedule, so we can't keep him from too long, but he'll have a couple of minutes for questions after his chat. Then Debbie will do some chat about New Zealand. I'll do some chat about Australia. Ailey, who is part of the registration and immigration team, she'll talk about that side of things. And then we'll have a question and answer at the end. So if you've got any questions and you want to remember what they are, you can stick them in the chat box during the event, and then we can go through them all at the end. So Head Medical. So some of you might already know us. We were founded in 2008 to help UK GPs and consultants to find jobs overseas. So far, we've helped over 1,800 doctors start jobs overseas. We've got over 120 currently going through the process. We recruit to a number of different countries for both the GPs and hospital specialists and junior doctors, including Australia, New Zealand, the Gulf, Ireland, Maldives, China, Singapore, lots of different places. We know the best employers. Our team, lots of us have actually gone out and done visits to practices and locations, because we know how important it is for people. You're not just moving jobs, you're moving to a whole different country. So it is really important. We're UK based, which is good to be on the same time zone for us to help you find a position, and liaising with you, during the day and out with office hours or surgery hours as we often have to do. But also when you're doing the paperwork, being in the same time as the registration team is really convenient. And they are absolutely excellent at helping doctors get through the paperwork. We regularly get fantastic feedback about the guys and how invaluable that they have been during the process. So yeah, GPs Predominantly, the locations that we recruit to are Australia, New Zealand, Middle East, Canada. We've also done a bit in Singapore, and we have done a bit in the Caribbean as well. We have done a bit in the Maldives. Some locations, it just depends when things become available. But if you're on the database and there's anything, any one-off or exciting locations that come in, then, we'll do mail shots about it. So you'll always know about them. If they pique your interest, you can give us a shout. So I'll do a brief intro, pass you over to Debbie, who's going to introduce Henry, and I will catch up with you all later.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out your evening. And as Vicky was saying there, we're just about to pass over because Henry, you're on a tight time scale. So yes, I would like to introduce Henry McKee, who is a doctor that I had the pleasure of placing out in New Zealand. So yep, the floor is over to you, Henry.
Hi, hello everybody. Yeah, I'm a GP who spent most of the career in Belfast and then retired from Belfast, worked in Scotland for a while, remote and rural. And then during COVID came out to New Zealand, and like so many of the other doctors out here, there's an awful lot of UK qualified doctors who are working in general practice. Reasonable number of Dutch doctors as well, and a few German, but not that many New Zealand qualified. Nearly all the people are actually from the UK, but it is a quite different system. We have 15-minute appointments with a 15-minute break every third patient. We have 2-hour lunch breaks that you can actually get out and do things. We've dedicated time for paperwork. We have a system that seems to work. Over here, people are complaining because of the fact that they're sometimes having to wait 3 months for a hip replacement and sometimes 6 weeks for a neurology appointment, and they all are virtually phoning up their MPs to complain whenever that happens. So that bit is good. Now, I'm not going to say that the system is not without its faults. We have a problem right now in the sense that the current government are having an austerity drive. They appear to have learned nothing from the United Kingdom and have decided to follow the United Kingdom route. But they've only got a 3-year term, and most people reckon that's going to end fairly soon. And there has been a newly agreed package for GPs, although nurses still are going on strike next week over their pay package over here. But it is because of the fact that currently we have what's called a national government who are effectively very pro-austerity. It's a lovely country. I'm over on the west coast right now, so it's raining this morning. So I would suggest to you, if you are coming to New Zealand, pick very carefully because there's different weather in all the different areas. Nelson Marlborough definitely gets the most sun. I'm working in Blenheim at Civic Health, who are currently recruiting, and so we argue between ourselves as to whether Nelson or Blenheim have the most sunlight, but it's a toss-up. But yeah, in winter here, whenever it's winter, it's usually cold mornings but blue skies and no wind. So you can cope with the fact that it's cold if it's blue skies for days on end. And the New Zealand is definitely a place to go if you want a lifestyle balance. The pay here isn't anywhere near as good as Australia. Australia, you definitely get paid a lot more money, but you also get worked harder. So if you are, and you'll also be very much chasing the dollar sign. Over here, it's more relaxed. Lifestyle means a lot to people, and it's just very much somewhere that people come to do the great outdoors, to enjoy their sports. Again, there's an emphasis on fitness here, which particularly, mind you, having said that, I'm in Blenheim, where we're reputed to have the fittest elderly population in the country. So I get 80-year-olds coming in to see me wanting some steroid in their knee because they're doing an ultra run the next day. One of my patients this week is indeed doing 6 marathons on 6 continents, and she's 82. And that's this year. She's planning on 6 marathons this year. So we have a largely different emphasis. Now, there are pockets of deprivation. There's no two ways about that. And there is increasing homelessness over the last last year, but with the current government. It's still not obvious. It's still not a problem, but you can't deny the fact that things have changed a little bit. I don't know what age the people who are attending are, but one of the things that might interest you is the path to residency and citizenship. I'm now a New Zealand resident, which was rather surprised to manage to get in. We came in during COVID, and that doesn't mean to say I have a passport. It'll take me another couple of years to actually get the New Zealand passport, but it would possibly be greedy on my part to be trying to get a third passport, having the luxury of having an Irish passport and a British passport. But anyway, that's the situation. Head Medical recruited me for this, and were very efficient at giving me information which allowed me to streamline the move. And there is a surprising amount of paperwork involved in transferring your registration. That bit is fiddly, and it does help to have somebody walk you through it. You can do it on your own, and it is possible, but it's certainly very, very helpful to have someone point you the right direction. And I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to have bank accounts set up before I arrived here, to have a mobile telephone sorted out. And the practices go out of their way to be friendly and helpful. It is, certainly my practice, it's a real team. And that's one of the things that really appeals to me, the fact that we're actually working the way general practice is meant to work, as a team and as a group of friends who work together, more so than just turning up, doing the job and going home. It's actually a pleasure going into work here, which is not something that I would always have said in the United Kingdom. But yes, I actually look forward to going into work in the morning, so that makes a difference. And again, of course, there are a reasonable number of us who are my age who have retired from general practice in the UK and come out here. But there's also a lot of younger people too. So it's something which I would definitely recommend to you. And certainly Head Medical helped me an awful lot in terms of giving me the information, pointing me the right direction, putting me in contact with the right people, making sure everything was done, all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and hitting the ground running. I've actually got to the stage now that I really don't know that I'm going to be working in the UK anymore, though I do have a place in Scotland. But I have enough work to do me in New Zealand, and it is a case whereby I think a lot of us, it's lifestyle. So we want to work to live rather than living to work. And if anybody has any questions, I'm prepared to answer questions. And so maybe hand back to Debbie or Vicky.
Thank you. Yeah. If anybody's got any questions for Henry, if you want to stick them in the chat box, and then we can let him go off for his 3-day hike.
I know, I'm very impressed, Henry. You're putting us all to shame with your fitness.
Age is a barrier to residency. It's not it's not a barrier to working here, but it is if you're trying to get citizenship. So if you're over, I think it's 56, you're too old to get residency. Now, they waived these rules during COVID, which is how I managed to get out. But you can work out here. That's not a problem. And lots of people do come out to work. You just won't get citizenship because that basically entitles you to the free healthcare. Well, yeah. So you've and the benefit system and the pension system. So you can't come out age 65 and expect to hop straight into the benefit system and the pension system. But you can come out and work.
Yeah, it's a really good way to cover it over. Then there is no age restrictions, as you were saying about working, and there is possibilities that you can apply directly to the ministry if you're out with that day before you turn 56. Ailey will be able to give you more expert support there as well if that is a situation that you find yourself in, because she is actually one of Head Medical's migration advisors. So yeah, really, really great question to ask there.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of how I get paid, effectively, I'm PAYE, so I'm an employee of the practice. So it's taxed at source. For the first couple of years I was out here, I was on a fixed contract. Currently, I'm working as a flexible locum. So I work for one practice and I work for the out of hours, although I could work for lots of practices if I wanted to. So the out of hours is not taxed at source. I don't know why I do it at all, to be perfectly honest. The work that I do for the practice, I'm paid every fortnight, and it's PAYE, so it just pops into the bank account, and I don't have to worry about the paperwork. Now, the system for, unfortunately, in terms of running a practice, if you become a partner in a practice out here, it's a bit like being a partner in a practice in the UK. There's a very complex system of payments. Patients do pay approximately £20 to put their bum in my seat. However, we have the opportunity, we have a slush fund of which we call Care Plus, a certain amount every month, where we can allow people to be seen for free or for reduced fees. So, if somebody's poor or is attending frequently, we'll slip it through under Care Plus and they won't pay for it. So effectively, it means that the people who can pay do pay, and those that can't don't. And in terms of how to choose your practice, well, can I advise you, where you want to choose a practice is somewhere sunny, like Blenheim. If you go to the West Coast, it's beautiful, but you'll get rained on. If you go to Auckland, it's a big city, and it's not. I think the top end of the South Island is the sweet spot. You've got the good weather, you've got access, and I see a question. I'll be leaving a partnership. I'm just looking to see if I can see what that one is. What's that question there? I'm leaving a partnership. Just can't read that.
No real intention of joining another one. Our salary GPs treated well. I would say so.
Treated very well.
Yeah.
Treated very well. I mean, you're definitely part of the team, and it really is a team. I genuinely, I'm going to a party at one of the other doctors on Saturday night. We socialize together. We'd go to the pub on a Friday after work together. You may find that a little bit too incestuous, but it's still it's nice. No, I'm quite delighted with it.
Yeah, it's neat if you want
anyway,
it.
Blenheim, let me recommend Blenheim to you. Definitely.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks so much for your time and safe walking.
Okay. Yes, keep me posted on your travels and some pictures and things as well. So yeah, great catching up, and we'll catch up when you're back in Scotland. Thanks, Henry.
Okay, good. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
And we don't, Head Medical don't take anything from the doctor. You don't pay us for our service. The practice pays us for securing the doctor for them. So just answer Dr. O'Neill's question there. So yeah, back to you, Deborah.
Perfect. So yes, I would just like to take the opportunity. There's quite a few things there that's actually going to complement what I was going to say. And it's also great as well just to hear that Henry's actually saying a lot of these things. And I take a lot of pride in that as well, that one of the questions you were asking there as well in the chat was like, how difficult is it to choose a practice? And one of the things that like Head Medical and myself, we pride ourselves on doing is having like a good like conversation, and sometimes many conversations with you, because this is such a big decision. And I like to explain it's a bit like putting a wish list together. So talking with you and saying like, what would you look for in a practice? What would you look for in a location? And through the expertise and doing this job for the last 10 years, then that's when I can start putting forward recommendations, different locations to consider, different clients, and you can speak to as many or as little as you want. So it really is like working as a partnership to make sure that we're ticking all the boxes for you. So this is just a little oversight just to really sort of showcase what New Zealand is. And as I said, it's going to complement quite a lot of what Henry said. New Zealand has always been one of our most popular locations as well, and it's famous for its highly sought after work-life balance, as Henry said. So it's great to hear that a doctor's actually out there on the ground experiencing it. New Zealand really does hold its own for being such a small country. On the other side of the world, I talk about as being like a little gem tucked away in the corner of the world. It really does like come up and hold its own against like bigger, more popular locations. It's continuously ranked in some of the world rankings. So some of the most recent ones that I've seen that have been in a couple of like the New Zealand Herald is the 2025 Global Peace Index. It was rated number 3 in the world, New Zealand. The 2025 Remote Life Work Balance Index, New Zealand came up number 1, so that's the 3rd year in a row. Auckland actually came up as 10th in the world for the Livability Index, so it really does like pack a good punch for being like such a small country. But yeah, there's so much more to New Zealand than just what meets the eye. It's stunning. As Henry was saying there, he's just off on a 3-day hike, and a lot of my doctors have actually done that. There's so much natural space to actually explore. There's so much nature, quite a lot of, especially mentioned there that there's quite a few Dutch doctors that are actually working out New Zealand. That's sometimes what they say. One of the reasons that pulls them towards consider New Zealand is for like nature and just having that outdoor space to explore. Queenstown is world renowned and world famous for being the home of the bungee jump. So you've got the different changes of seasons. Like Henry was saying, it's worthwhile considering exactly what sort of weather and what sort of lifestyle you're actually looking for. And then we can complement that with like different locations. There's so many Hollywood blockbuster movies that have actually been filmed out in New Zealand. You've got Hobbitation Land. So if you're a fan of like The Hobbit, it's all these different things here as well. And there's no really anywhere else in the world that you could be standing on like a beautiful beach with the sun beating down on you, dust the sand off your feet, jump in the car, and within a couple of hours you're in like natural forests, you're up in the mountains, you can go hiking or tramping as they call it. There's so much outdoor space for you to like enjoy and explore out in New Zealand. So it really does embrace it. And as Henry's just shown there, any free time and downtime you've got, a lot of my doctors do travel and really do embrace that. Quite a few of the doctors will say that if you ask any questions about New Zealand, go and speak to the international doctors because they'll be able to give you a far better overview of their country than what some like native Kiwis can. It's a very, very multicultural location. One of the things that I experienced, and it really sort of resonated maybe when we went out on a visit some years ago to do a site visit, was it's just how much they recognise and how much like the Maori culture is actually celebrated. If you're out in New Zealand, if I'm lucky enough that I actually place out there, if you go and do one of the Maori experiences, there are quite a few that are actually placed around about New Zealand, but I did the one that was in Rotorua, or as it's also nicknamed as Rota Vegas, because it's like because viewed as being the party capital of New Zealand. But that is by far one of the best nights that I think I've ever had. I have never been so terrified, but yet so excited in all my life. Having the haka performed literally 6 feet in front of me, I was just absolutely mesmerised. And it was really great just to hear and see like how much they try and keep the traditions going so that can be passed down in generation to generation. So yeah, it's a very, very inclusive country, and that's why a lot of our doctors do actually choose it. The flexibility that you've got in New Zealand, the process for getting you out there is one of the shortest that we've got. So you could really be out there within about 4 months from completing all your paperwork. I can sometimes get contracts as short as 6 months, up to more longer term. There's not any geographical restrictions on where you live and work. And just hearing there from Henry as well, that it's that flexibility that you've actually got there. When you first go out for your visas, you do go out there as an employer, as an employee with the employer. And again, that just gives you more protection, that you've got holiday pay, you've got sickness pay, you've got the guaranteed income coming in, as opposed to being in a location where you're more self-employed and under that make-up a model. So that really does prove to be really popular with our doctors, and getting paid every fortnight is far easier to be able to budget as well. The taxing situation out in New Zealand, the maximum tax you would probably pay initially would be 33%. They don't have the same model that we do have here in the UK. So a lot of our doctors that are currently here in the UK, I'm not really sure about some of the other international locations that we've got that people have joined us from. But yeah, there's no national insurance contributions. Unless you're a resident of New Zealand, you can't join the Kiwi pension scheme. So again, that gives you more disposable income that you can have each month. The cost of living, there's a cost of living crisis everywhere in the world, but what you find is it's like anything, being a small island tucked away at the other side of the world, there can be some things that are slightly more expensive because they're having to be shipped in. But actually, ironically, like white goods are much cheaper. And what our doctors find is that it's actually the second-hand market that seems to be so much more prevalent and popular. So if you're going out there as opposed to like hiring a car, it's far more cost effective to actually buy second-hand. And then when you're actually leaving, you can actually sell that on. Quite a few of my doctors have actually done that as well with camper vans. That seems to be really popular so that you can go off and explore. It's an amazing place, whether you are a young professional or you're a slightly more mature professional that's looking to go out and explore the wonders of New Zealand. It's a great place for families as well, that it's all about that work-life balance. And it's an amazing place to actually consider actually setting up permanent routes or even just temporary routes. Great schooling system. You've got the choice of having state-funded schools or private schooling. And again, there's the bigger cities, you've got more choice. There's also all the extracurricular stuff that they do within the schools. And as Henry touched on there as well, it's all that outdoor space and just a real focus on like fitness and outdoors and sports. So there's a lot to be done, not just within the schooling, but also just in your own life as well. So much space to enjoy. And yeah, it's a work-life balance that everybody chooses to go out to New Zealand. The population of New Zealand, a little fun fact, that New Zealand is roughly the same size as the UK, but it's actually got the population of Scotland. So again, that just goes to show the diversity of it as well, that the North Island, there's a lot more towns and cities. So if you're looking to be somewhere that's more connected, but then as Henry was just saying there, he loves the South Island, like the top of the South Island just seems to be like the best location for him. And the average salaries there, this is also a great point as well for any of our doctors that are travelling with spouses. They would potentially be coming out on your visa. So they are not restricted on the work that they do or the hours that they do, and they can actually continue in their own profession, or they can actually take the opportunity, which a lot of the doctors' spouses have actually done, and just choose to do something completely different. I had one doctor that went out there with her husband. He previously was an accountant, I think he was. But when he went out to New Zealand, he'd always wanted to be a barista. So he just kicked about in his jangles and his flip-flops, and he became a barista, and he lived his best life while he was out there with his wife. So lots and lots of choice and opportunity for everyone. This is just like a little bit more about sort of like the facts and like what to consider. There's two different pathways to come out to New Zealand. And again, you'll hear from Ailey later on in the webinar just to cover these over in potentially more detail. But on the surface of things, New Zealand is a very, very welcoming healthcare system, and they will welcome in on the competency-based pathway UK or Irish trained doctors. Or if you don't fall into that category, there's actually 29 comparable healthcare systems that they will recognise that as long as you've worked 33 months out of the last 45, doing at least 20 hours a week as a GP, then you can actually be invited to apply for registration with Medical Council of New Zealand. And as I said, Henry also said there as well that you could do it alone, but it's the service that we offer is so invaluable that you've got a team here that would take you through all the paperwork to get you registered Medical Council and also get your visas approved and all the applications done for yourself and all the family that's travelling with you. So it's definitely the services that we would be hoping that would see you through the whole process, just to make it that streamlined process that Henry mentioned. There's no geographical restrictions on where you can live and work in New Zealand. It's up to you. Do you want to have big city living? Do you want to be in Auckland? Do you want to be in the capital city of Wellington? Or would you like to be in more sort of rural, semi-rural locations? The choices are endless. Another great thing about New Zealand as well is that it depends on like where you actually are. But even in some of the outer suburbs and places like Auckland, I've got a fantastic client that I'm working with up in the Hibiscus Coast, and you are in a community there, but you could just be a short 10-minute journey out and you're actually out and you feel like you're actually in a more rural setting. So it's more farmland, more agricultural, you're close to beaches. So yeah, some wonderful, wonderful locations to try and consider. And again, it depends on what you're looking for. Do you want to have a small city? Do you want to have a smaller practice? Would you prefer to be in a clinic that's maybe run by doctors and its partners, or would you like to be part of larger clinics that are maybe part of like some of the corporate companies that I work really closely with, or some of them that are actually linked to Health Board of New Zealand? So yeah, the options they're endless there as well. When anybody first goes out to New Zealand, you do initially work under supervision, which a lot of the doctors do also come back and say how valuable they feel that is. So when you're out in New Zealand, you work initially, you will be partnered with a fellow of the Royal College. So that would be somebody within the practice. And it's more a case of you just have a buddy system that you meet with them on a regular basis whilst you're first integrating into the healthcare system. They'll be reporting back to medical council just to really showcase like how well you've adapted. That process can be anywhere between 6 and 12 months. I've had some doctors that have gone out there and within 6 months have been signed off on their general registration. Some it's just taken them a little bit longer. So there is that support network there. Healthcare is healthcare, regardless of where you are in the world. But it's just trying to work through the slight anomalies and just slight differences. Unless you're a fellow, there's certain drugs that you might be prescribing here in your current role, but you won't be able to do that in New Zealand. So it's just trying to work through all those different little scenarios and just give you all the help and guidance. But for me, doing this job for 10 years, I actually love being part of all my doctor's stories. As you can see here, this is just some of the stunning scenery that doctors have actually sent to me. My doctor that's actually in the photo there, he's actually still in New Zealand. He also has his residency. He only wanted to go out there with his wife for a year, but they fell in love with the island. They're down in the South Island. They really enjoy, as Henry was saying there, it's that feeling of being part of something. The clinics are very much a team, so everybody feels part of it. They don't feel that there's different hierarchies. So yeah, it really is a great place. So I hope that this has helped showcase New Zealand. And if you've got any questions at the end, I look forward to helping you out with those. But I would now like to pass back over to Vicky, and she's now going to showcase all that there is for Australia. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Debbie. So yes, I don't think I actually introduced myself at the start. I'm Vicky and I head up the GP team. There's a team of 5 of us, including Debbie, and I also am one of the 2 consultants that recruit to Australia. So yeah, I mean, I might be a bit biased to Australia. So we've been talking about walking. So this lovely view here, this is the view from Mount Wellington in Hobart in Tasmania. I don't know if there are any other climbers amongst us now that Henry has gone, but it's only 300 feet less than Ben Nevis, our highest mountain in the UK, if that would tempt any of you to go. So yeah, Australia, like New Zealand, consistently ranked as one of the best places in the world to live. I've been fortunate enough to go out and I've visited 4 times, so I've seen quite a few of the different states. I've done Western Australia, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, and ACT. Now, when I say I've done them, I've visited them. I've barely scratched the surface. I've loved everywhere that I've been, but it's been enough to give me quite a good insight, and I've visited lots of practices in those different places. So the work-life balance, as Henry said about New Zealand, it's the same for Australia. People work to live, they don't live to work. And when I was out, one of the things that struck me is just, people going for breakfast meetings before they go to work, and they go to office, going to the gym, exercising, doing things after work as well. Obviously, good weather contributes massively to that. But it is very apparent in the lifestyle. It is very different. Australia still has a strong and growing economy. They are one of the few locations, I think, that didn't go into the recession in the 2008 global crisis. But unfortunately, COVID broke their almost 30-year recession-free streak in 2020, but it was brief and they have recovered. So still a growing economy, still doing well. Average salaries around 90,000 Australian dollars. So again, as Debbie says, when you've got people who are taking partners and spouses that are going out to look to work, then yeah, there's good earning potential for them as well. Variety of climates, because it is such a huge location, it is a continent as well as a country. You've got Queensland, which is subtropical. You've got Western Australia and Adelaide, which are more Mediterranean, and then you've got Tasmania, which is like more European with your 4 seasons. It's not hot all year round, and that's something that people ask about Australia is excuse me, they're concerned that the climate's going to be too warm for them. I went out to Perth on one of my trips, and Perth is actually the sunniest capital city in the world. and it rained when I was there, and there was lots of greenery, and I was quite surprised about that, having not visited it. I went out for dinner with some GPs that I placed out there. I've got a picture of that towards the end, and they were all actually saying how much they've acclimatized, so much so that they were, which when normally they've been in the UK would have found that quite pleasant. So Ailey will discuss the registration process. It does take 6 to 12 months to get there, depending on which pathway you go on. So there is an investment in time and money from the doctor and from the surgery. We do get 1-year contracts for Australia. However, most surgeries, and to be honest, most GPs, when they look at it, prefer to do a minimum of 2-year commitment, if not longer. And population sitting at about 27 million. So yeah, for a huge location, it's still not that huge a population. So in terms of who is eligible registration, there are 2 colleges for GPs in Australia. There's ACRRM and there's RACGP. So they both have pathways for GPs to go. And then as of October 2024, there was the APRA expedited pathway that was introduced. Some of you may have heard of that. So ACRRM is the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine. And as it sounds, to follow that pathway, you have to work in a more remote location and you have to have specific rural experience. So the college will ask for detailed information, assess your criteria to see that you meet what they need. MRCGP by exam is one of the qualifications that's on this. However, most UK doctors go in one of the other 2 pathways. We find that ACRRM's more used by doctors whose qualifications aren't listed on the RACGP or the APRA pathway. So for RACGP, and I noticed that there's a question about this, so we can go back to that as well. GPs are assessed as partially or substantially compatible. MRCGP by exam is usually substantially compatible, but they assess your training programme, the exams that you've done, your recency of practice, hours, scope of practice, and your required experience letters from previous employers to support that. If you're going to go down the RACGP pathway, then we can assess your CV, your experience, your hours, and we can advise you what's going to be most suitable for you. So in October 2024, APRA introduced the expedited pathway. 3 qualifications that are on this. The MRCGP by exam in the UK from 2007, people who qualified from 2007, the New Zealand College and the Irish College of GPs. And just recently, RACGP have confirmed that GPs who will go on the APRA expedited pathway are eligible for fellowship with the Royal Australian College of GPs, which is something that people have been asking a lot of questions about. So in terms of where you can work in Australia, again, people sometimes think that they're going to have to work somewhere very remote. That's not the case. You do have to work in what's called a DPA location. This is reviewed by the government on an annual basis. There's a publicly available map that we can share with you, and you can go on and you can have a look. So this just gives you an example. This is Queensland's DPA map. Now, the blue area there, that's where you can't work as an overseas trained GP. The rest of it, that's all DPA. You'll see you've got Caboolture, 45 minutes from the CBD. You've got Ipswich, which is 35 minutes. You've got Tweed Heads, which is 30 minutes. And by CBD, we literally mean like if you were to stick a pin in the middle. So although, you might think I'm on 30 minutes from the centre, you're actually in the outer suburbs and you're really not that far away. Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, Canberra, you can be, I would say 30, 45 minutes to the CBD. Tasmania doesn't have any DPA restrictions, so you can actually be in their 2 major cities in Hobart and Launceston. Sydney doesn't have DPA, however, you do have Wollongong and you do have Central Coast, which are about an hour to the south and north. You've also got Newcastle, which is the 2nd biggest city in Australia, where you can work. So the second map here, what this is shown is another classification, which probably isn't relevant to you unless you're partially comparable or you're ACRRM. It's the Triple M locations, and that is classified from level 1 to level city. To level 7. Level 1 are the cities and metro areas, and 7 is the most regional. So the reason I'm saying it's relevant for ACRRM is you have to work in a Triple M4 or above location in ACRRM, so it does have to be more rural. APRA and RACGP substantially comparable. All you need to concern yourself with is it DPA? Australia is so big that it's almost split into sort of 3 layers. You've got metro, you've got regional, and then you've got remote. And so when most people are moving and thinking about move, a lot of the times they've just heard of the major cities. However, there's some fantastic other large cities and towns that are worth considering. And I'm happy, myself and Aaron and Crystal are happy to discuss them with you. And it's like the UK, depending on what lifestyle you're looking for and what you're looking to do, you're going to get more house for your money if you're away from the major cities. And you'll also find that, they've got everything you would want. They've got great schools, hospitals, cafes, restaurants, everything that you could want to sort of keep your life busy. If you fancy more remote, we can certainly help you with that as well. So this again is just to show you another example of DPA locations. South Australia, you've got Elizabeth, which is only sort of 35 minutes away, and you can see you've got other areas round about. So working in Australia, the healthcare system there, Medicare is the government funded system, and people that go to see the GPs under Medicare, you'll see that referred to as bulk billing. So if you look on a GP practice, you might see bulk billing practice, or you see an advert, it might say, bulk billing or mixed billing. So bulk billing is the Medicare. So it's a fee for service model. Doctors get 60 to 70% of the billings. So what happens is a patient, goes into the practice, they've got their Medicare cards, the doctor sees them, they bill Medicare for the services provided, they get the percentage of the billings. There's a list of items, Medicare item numbers, and just to give you an example, so like a standard consult is an item number 23, it's billed about $42. But you've got all your other services that you would provide to the patients. Care plans, female health, minor procedures. Doctors also tend to get involved in a lot more specialisms in Australia. So that's something that you could look to do if you're interested in skin, different things. So you will get a percentage of what is billed to Medicare. You've also got mixed billing. So this is when your patient's paying out of pocket top up, and this has become more common. So lots of practices, children, students, pensioners, etc., they'll be bulk billed, and other people will pay an out-of-pocket top-up. And as the doctor, you'll get a percentage of those billings as well. Appointments, you're looking 10 to 15-minute appointments, and patients have to come in for test results and repeat prescriptions in Australia. Lots of flexibility via hours. They don't tend to talk about morning and afternoon sessions. It's more about consulting hours. You're looking at a minimum of a 3-day week for most practices. If they are recruiting, that is their preference. Some will, depending on the requirements, be looking for a doctor to work full-time, and full-time is usually somewhere between 35 to 40 consulting hours a week. And these pictures, that's just showing you an example of some of the clinics that, we've been out and we've visited, and procedure rooms and consulting rooms. You get a mixture of types of practice in Australia because it is a different model. So you get corporates, which are big organisations. Some of the big names you might be aware of. You've got 4Health. They're actually going to be in the UK at the end of November to do face-to-face meetings. You've got Ochre, also going to be in the UK in October. And you've got Partnered Health and IPN. They're some of the bigger names. So they're big corporates. They are exactly as it sounds, they're corporate-owned organisations, and they have got practices across the different states and tend to, have quite a sort of brand that they all follow. Then you've got groups, and they can vary in size to a GP that maybe owns a couple of practices, to a GP owned, that's got maybe like 20 practices. There's a real sort of variation in that, right down to you've got independent GP practices that, they own the one practice, they work there, and there's GPs that work there. They tend to have more on site. They've got pathology, they've got procedure rooms, as I mentioned, they've got skin clinics, they've got female health, they've got allied health. Bigger clinics often have, imaging facilities on site too. In terms of earnings, you're looking at, we give a range, and the reason for the range is, depends how many patients you see, depends the services you provide. There are various factors, but when you speak to practices, they will be able to give you more information about their billings, about what their doctors' average billings are, and give you insight into that. But the range we give is 250 to 400,000 Australian dollars. Special interests are absolutely encouraged and supported, which is something that we find a lot of doctors really enjoy. The feedback is that there's less paperwork overall, more job satisfaction, and can practice more medicine. And as Henry said, things like referrals for getting operations in Australia, they're also a quicker turnaround, which leads to more satisfied patients. So I will now pass you over to Ailey. She'll talk you through the registration and what we can do for you in the immigration side of things, and then we'll have some more information at the end.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Ailey. So I work as part of our registration and immigration team. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the licensing and immigration processes for Australia and New Zealand. So we have a team at Head Medical who are dedicated to assisting doctors through the medical registration process. They're there through every step of the process. It can become quite complicated, quite time consuming. So they're there to help guide you through every step of the way. And then we also have a dedicated immigration team as well that can help with visa support thereafter. So starting off with New Zealand, so the first step is to apply for primary source verification of your qualifications. So this is carried out online through a service called Myint Health. You might previously have heard of Epic, which is essentially the same service. So they contact the issuing authorities to confirm your qualifications. That can run in the background while you move on to the next step, which is to apply for registration with the Medical Council of New Zealand. And that is to obtain your licence to practice in New Zealand. So there are 4 pathways. There's competent authority, which is open to people who have obtained their primary medical degree in the UK or Ireland. The compatible health pathway for those who have qualifications and experience in a compatible country. As Debbie mentioned before, there's 29 countries on that list, and you have to have worked there for 33 months. There's the locum tenens pathway, which is a popular choice amongst specialists who are going out to practice in New Zealand for up to 12 months. And then there's provisional vocational registration as well, which is a form of specialist registration in New Zealand. So the most common pathways that we tend to see amongst GPs are the competent authority pathway for UK and Irish trained, and then the compatible health pathway. Both of them are pretty speedy processes to get through. They take around a month to process, and you'll see the costs up on the screen here. So for the competent authority pathway, it's $555, and for the provisional general compatible health pathway, it is $1,734. So once you've obtained medical registration, you can then move on to the visa stage. We have an immigration division here, so we can assist with that. It's an optional service, but a lot of doctors do find it beneficial. So there are 2 most common visa pathways that we tend to see for doctors. The first being an accredited employer work visa. So that one allows you to work in New Zealand for up to 5 years, depending on the length of your contract, and it allows you to support family members who can obtain a partner of a worker work visa for a partner, or if you've got children, they can get a dependent child student visa or a dependent child visitor visa, as long as they meet the age requirements for that. There is no upper age limit at all for the accredited employer pathway, so anybody can go up to New Zealand on that pathway. The second most common pathway is straight to residence, which is a direct pathway to residency, and a straightforward pathway to then get permanent residency down the line. Again, you can include eligible family members on that visa. This one does have an upper age limit of 55, although there are certain routes you can take to obtain the visa for those that can demonstrate the need for an exemption. And once you're in New Zealand, there is a period of supervision to complete before gaining full vocational registration. So moving on to Australia. So the process for Australia does start off similarly to New Zealand with primary source verification of your qualifications. It's done in exactly the same way for Australia as it is for New Zealand. For GPs, there are two main pathways. Firstly, there is the AHPRA Expedited Specialist Pathway, which allows you to bypass the college and apply directly to AHPRA for assessment of your qualifications and the grant for medical registration. This pathway is currently open to a select few countries, including the UK. The RACGP have recently announced a new pathway to fellowship for those who have commenced work via the AHPRA Expedited Specialist Pathway. For those who are not from a recognised country, there is still the RACGP PEP Specialist Pathway. So under this route, you would apply to the Royal College of General Practitioners for assessment of your qualifications and experience to determine your compatibility to an Australian trained GP. After assessment, you'd be deemed substantially, partially or not compatible to an Australian GP. For those who are substantially or partially compatible, you can then go on to obtain your AHPRA registration, and you would complete a period of supervision before obtaining specialist registration. There is also, as Vicky mentioned, ACRRM, which is the College of Rural and Remote Medicine, and that serves as another pathway for those who don't have qualifications from a country recognised as compatible by the RACGP. It's a very similar process. You would still apply for an assessment of your compatibility, and then upon your outcome you could then proceed with your AHPRA registration as long as you were substantially or partially compatible. There are more limitations, as Vicky mentioned, with where you can work. You have to work M4 to M7, but it is a pathway that doctors do use. So once you have your RACGP or AHPRA, the next step in the process is to apply for your AHPRA registration. So once AHPRA is approved, you can then apply for your visa. In most cases, this tends to be a 482 visa initially. So a 482 is an employer's nominated visa, which allows you to work in Australia for up to 4 years, and you can include eligible family members, and there is no upper age limit. And it can also serve as a great route towards PR for those eligible. There is also the 186 pathway for permanent residency. It tends to be less common as the primary visa that you would apply for. However, there are routes to a 186 visa under the 482 pathway, and that also comes with age exemptions, as there is an upper age limit of 45 for most PR routes in Australia. So for medical registration and for immigration, there are English language standards that must be met. So these can be met either through educational pathways. So if, for example, you'd done your secondary schooling and university education in the UK, you would meet the requirements, and then you can also meet the requirements by going through English language tests. So you could do IELTS, OET, or if you have PLAB, then that can also serve as a route. And after a receipt of a job offer, what would happen is that a dedicated registration consultant would get in touch with you and outline exactly what is needed in your circumstances. So in terms of immigration, so as previously mentioned, we offer administrative support with a 482 visa for Australia. This is completely free of charge. There are strict guidelines in place which come to providing immigration advice for New Zealand and for other Australian visa pathways. And for these circumstances, we have an immigration division, which is called Head Immigration. So this is the part of the division that I work in. So Head Immigration is a recently launched division of the company. So we're a team of myself. I'm a licensed immigration advisor for New Zealand and a registered migration agent for Australia. And then we also have Neve, who is a provisionally licensed immigration advisor. So we exist to support both employers and applicants for their visa applications. It is a completely optional service, but does provide additional assurance for visa applicants that their visa application is being handled by experienced professionals who are well versed in immigration legislation. For both Australia and New Zealand, we can offer comprehensive support with skilled, temporary and permanent visa pathways, family visa pathways, and residency pathways. So our service includes tailored immigration advice, preparation and lodgement of the applications, and continuous follow-up with the relevant immigration authorities through to approval. And that's it from me. So I will pass you back to Vicky, who's going to share some hints and tips from some other GPs who've made the move.
Thanks, Ailey. So yeah, this was me a few years ago, out on dinner with 7 of the GPs that I've placed in Perth, all of whom I think are still there and really enjoying it. And yeah, these are just, asked them when we were out, could they give us any sort of advice, any hints and tips and what they thought. And so yeah, you can see that there. Best decision ever made, freedom to work in clinical practice, process was made easier by Head Medical. People saying, think about the type of practice you want to join, new versus established, corporate versus independent. Speak to civil practice owners, don't rush into a decision. Head Medical, very helpful, just go for it. And yeah, so all positive stuff, and we do get a lot of good feedback from doctors. I've recently done an online interview with 2 GPs that I placed in New South Wales, a GP couple. So I'll be finessing that a little bit with marketing, and that'll be coming out online as well. So if you're registered with us as a GP, then that'll get sent out and you'll be able to have a look at that and hear what they've got to say as well. So we'll go on to questions and answers. I think there's been some things that have come up in the chat. So just go and have a look up there. Yeah, time frame. So for New Zealand, it's shorter, as Debbie said, about 4 months. For Australia, on the expedited pathway, you're probably looking about 8 months. Doctors usually get job offers and then do the paperwork. So part-time work acceptable for a tier 1 visa.
I assume by tier 1, you're speaking about accredited employer, which has a minimum requirement of 30 hours per week.
Yeah, sorry, that was one of the things that I actually meant to cover over for like New Zealand, and that was one of the questions that was asked earlier on about sort of like how much do you get paid and how much does head medical take? As Vicky said there, we don't actually take anything from the doctors because we get paid directly from our clinics. New Zealand is a very similar model to what potentially you're working here in the UK, that it's a fixed salary. So I've got some really great earning potentials there. You'll probably be earning anywhere between 80 to 100,000 pounds sterling equivalent. And that's like just for a 4-day week. The relocation packages that can also be on offer as well can be anything from $5,000 up to $25,000 just to help with the relocation costs. And because you're actually going to be an employee, you do also have holiday pay, sick pay. So it just gives you that little bit more security that you're going out. And as Ailey said, for New Zealand, being on an employer accredited work visa, you do need to commit to doing at least 30 hours a week to satisfy your medical council and immigration requirements for New Zealand.
And Dr. Kant, I see your questions there about Australia and being stuck for the last 2 months. I think it's probably better if we have a more in-detailed chat with you out with the call, if you like send your CV over and your qualification. As you're mentioning there, you've done summative assessment, so it has to be theoretical and practical. And they do usually, yeah, want the MRCGP. So I'll drop you a message and we can organise to chat about it in a bit more detail.
I see that there's a question there about, does the 30 hours all have to be clinical, and you're meaning for more teaching and other roles? Again, that's something that we can look at for New Zealand. For Medical Council, you do need to be working a minimum of 30 hours. But what we can do is we can speak to the clinics and see whether there are any special interests that you have that you'd be looking to do along with your consultations. Doing any sort of training, that's something that potentially could come once you've got your general registration. But initially, when you first go out for at least that 6 to 12 month period, it would be more so focusing just on the general practice and really just integrating well into the New Zealand healthcare system and becoming comfortable with computer systems and how to basically see patients and prescribe, etc. So yeah, there is a lot of diversity there if you want to do something different. And if you do want to go straight to residency, that's a pathway that is a lot more streamlined and a lot quicker now as well, which myself and Ailey can discuss it in more detail with you. So there's opportunities there. Once you've got your residency, you could reduce your hours down if you wanted to work less.
The minimum hours in the UK, no, there isn't. The RACGP did have minimum hours. The APRA expedited pathway is not as strict. I think it's 4 weeks clinical experience within the last 12 months and 12 months within the last 3 years.
I think it's 4 years.
4 years, thanks, Ailey.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's clinical and they're not as strict in scope of practice and things. So no. There was a question and answer. Somebody had asked about the salaries when we were saying non-medical specialists. That just means average salaries for, yeah, anybody that's not a doctor for all the other jobs that people do, the average salaries across the countries. The expedited pathway and the RACGP pathway, it's a different process in terms of the paperwork that you have to provide, and there's different costs. Yeah, so the expedited pathway was brought in to be more streamlined for those 3 qualifications. You only have to do the primary source verification, APRA, Visa and Medicare. The RACGP, you've got the primary source verification, then you've got RACGP Part A and B, then you've got the Visa, then you've got RACGP Part C, and then you've got Medicare. So APRA should take about 6 months once they've got everything completely up to speed. It's about 8 months just now. RACGP takes about 12 months, and there are different costs associated. But I can send you over more details about that as well, Dr. Ali, if that's something that you wanted. We've got a list that break down the cost for the different parts, the different processes. So the visa, the visa for the RACGP and for the APRA expedited pathway are the same. For both of them, it's the 482 employee sponsored visa that you go on. The reason for that is that you go as an independent contractor rather than as an employee. So going directly on the 186, you have to be an employee. There's cost implications for employers, different contracts and things. So the majority will do the 482 visa. On the 482 visa, if you're under 45, when you go out after 2 years, you can transition onto the 186. Ailey, you can keep me right if I'm saying anything wrong here.
Yeah, so you can transition to the 186, but there are age exemptions that are open to a lot of doctors on the 186. So if you are over that age cap of 45, going out on a 482 visa initially and then transitioning over to a 186 is a great way to get an age exemption and be able to access PR that you wouldn't be able to otherwise access.
Yeah. If you're under 45, once you get your APRA specialist registration, which you'll get within about 6 months, you can also look at the 189 points-based visa if you're eligible. Again, that's something that Ailey would be able to help you with. Mm-hmm. What are the points you need to bear in mind? Where you work, because the Medicare rebate is the same. So where you want to work in Australia, it's more about personal factors for you. So your family situation, are you taking a partner? Are you taking kids? Are you going out on your own? What kind of lifestyle do you want? You know, do you want to be near the coast? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want a home? Do you want an apartment? So we would have a chat with you on a one-to-one and find out a bit more about, where you live just now, what your interests are, and we can advise you better that way. In terms of income, it doesn't massively vary where you're based, so it's more about personal choice and what you want to do. A lot of people tend to have family or friends that are in Australia already, and that tends to be a pull for them to do it for where they're going to go. Does anybody else want to ask any more questions? Well, we will share this recording with you, and all of our contact details will be on it. So yeah, if there's anything you want to talk to us about, please get in touch. Yeah, I will get in touch with Dr. Khan. I'll drop you a note and we can try and organise to have a chat about the qualifications and see if we can give you any advice. I do know with the RACGP, and Ailey is a reg expert as well, they're quite particular on how things are worded as well. So yeah, depending on how you're wording things might have an impact, but we can have a chat to you about that.
If anybody wants to talk to any other doctors, and I know that Vicky would be able to do this as well with Australia, but I've got a number of doctors that are still out in New Zealand and some that have actually come back. So if there's any locations or any doctors that you would like to further connect with, just to get a more a more a more personal overview of their experience of not also just working with Head Medical, but actually the healthcare system that we've been working in New Zealand, then I'd be more than happy to be able to do that as well. If it's a similar situation, if it's like family, people that have relocated with children similar ages, because again, it can be a really big thing. There's so much that we want to help and support with, and a lot of third-party companies that we can help with to make the whole process. It's not just about finding you a job and getting you out there. It's also about all the other little aspects as well. And you can also look at both locations as well, just in case you're maybe a bit unsure. Is it going to be New Zealand? Is it going to be Australia? So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the work nature and burden wouldn't massively vary unless you went very remote and you were far away from hospital. Then you would expect to probably be doing, you know, a bit more sort of urgent care work. But yeah, if you're going to be sort of, you know, relatively metropolitan and regional, no. Well, thanks everybody for your time this evening, and yeah, hopefully we'll hear from you all soon or speak to you again. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.